Small cracks in the sealant of your particle board aquarium stand might not seem like a big deal, but it can lead to serious water damage in your stand, which can compromise the structural integrity of your aquarium. A little crack like this can quickly grow into something like this. Even worse, something like this. So follow along today. I'll show you how to solve that problem real quick and easy. Let's get going. What up, fish friends? Hope you're having a great day. Taking a look at particle board stands today. They are very common if you shop at big box stores. Also, a lot of the used tanks on the market come with particle board stands. So basically, um, unlike a wood stand, made from actual wood, particle board is just a bunch of particles that have been compressed and glued together, and then they're sealed with some sort of, I don't know, plastic or waterproof covering. But what's very common is that on these cheaper stands, that coating or covering will slowly get worn down in certain spots. And then once water makes its way into the particle board, it causes it to inflate. And where that can become a serious issue is when you have such a big inflation on one end of the tank, and then there's little gaps in the stand in between inflated areas. So the tank isn't actually sitting flush on the stand. Now, maybe for a little tank, it's not such a big deal, but once you get into something like this, got 125 gallons of water, this whole thing is probably like 1,500 pounds worth of weight. And, the larger the imperfections, the more you are at risk of structural integrity problems. So, all I'm going to do here is take some paint and cover up these visible particle board spots initially, and then I'm going to go over it with some silicone. This should be a really quick and easy process. The only downside is I've never been able to find paint that perfectly matches this black. Like, you just can't get a deep, dark enough black at Home Depot or even like Sherwin-Williams. So I'm just going to use what I got, and it'll have to be close enough. So I'm just coming along here with some black paint, getting a little bit on the stand, but that's all right. I'll wipe it off afterwards. I have tried some other things to get rid of this damaged particle board, and I can tell you it certainly didn't work. I used some clamps, like a dozen clamps, and put a flush piece of wood on top and below, and tried to wedge or clamp this like unevenness down, and that certainly did not work. And then I also took a chisel in here and tried to kind of chisel out some of this inflated particle board. That also did not work, and it's pretty much the only other two things that I've tried. If you don't want to go this route, you can also pull the particle board off the stand and then put a new piece on, or just a piece of actual wood or plywood, or whatever you want to do. Make sure to put a good bead of silicone down this whole front edge here. I'm not just trying to protect those worn down exposed areas. I'm trying to fill all the gaps in between the tank and the stand where it doesn't sit flush with the stand. So we got a nice layer of silicone everywhere, except there it's not so great. And then I'm just going to take my finger, run it all the way down here. That's going to make sure it fills in all those gaps and cracks, nooks and crannies. And so for the bottom, I'm not as worried about water accumulating there. I'm just going to be hitting the spots where I painted over. It's a lot harder to kind of run it across along this corner. And it's also not necessary because water is not going to be pooling up there. And one day later, this seal is perfectly good. I can splash around as much as I want. Being clumsy, I know I'm going to spill everywhere. It's kind of inevitable when you do water changes. So there's one last thing to talk about. How do we stay out of this situation in the first place? I think a lot of damage comes from moving the stand. So you try and fit a thick stand through a doorway and it scrapes up along the side because the damage always seems to be right on those edges. You're standing next to it and holding something hard and it scratches it or whatever repeatedly. That's going to do some damage. You have the tank in a hallway and you're walking by. So be careful with repeated movements around your stand because that's for sure going to do some damage to it. Now, the one last thing that I've noticed is that if you use fertilizers, they're pretty strong chemically in the concentrated form. So when it enters the water and dilutes, it's fine. But in its concentrated form, if it sits on that stand, it's going to eat away at that coating. So make sure to take care of your stuff. And if you buy something used like I did, it's really not that hard to go ahead and seal it. Do that so that you can prevent any major problems from spiraling out of control. Last thing you need is your aquarium cracking because of an unbalanced stand. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you learned something, hit that like and subscribe button. Appreciate the support. Until next time, see ya.